Alright, guess I'll start in alphabetic order, putting BP on the list first. We're basically going to be running a viability test. Preferred terrain and abilities will be factored in. And essentially we're gonna be checking, like, are you dead on sight? Because that's the one thing that should be forbidden in this game, dead on sight. In terms of how the balance works, you should either be able to outrun something, you should be able to escape something through the use of abilities, or you should be able to beat them. If all of this results in a one-sided beatdown, so if you run away, they catch you. If you try to fight back, they beat you. And if you try to hide, they find you. If all three of these things are true, then you are essentially what I call dead on sight. Dead on sight would mean that a creature's balance is just not good for the game right now and cannot survive in the ecosystem and pretty much will go extinct. Extinct meaning players will stop playing it more and more. They run into scenarios where they cannot do anything and they just die. Because nobody really likes losing that many hours, you know? And in this case, BP is an aquatic with an ability that is pretty rare in the game. The ability to actually swim and survive, I mean. So just being able to swim across a river but losing all your stamina, that ain't it. I'm really talking about the creatures that can dive down and have enough oxygen. So sorry Herrera, you're not on the list. Basically BP, I think versus the entire roster, it can escape. So it pretty much, I can do them one by one, but let's just skip all of that and let's say it can escape anything. The only check that is worthwhile to make is versus a Dino. So let's just go into that. I think the first thing that is worth mentioning is that we don't have data on any swim speeds. So I have no idea if a Dino catches a BP in the water. Let me know down below if that's the case, so I can learn something. So we're mainly going to be using the speed stat to determine this one, and with a speed stat of 32 versus a speed stat of 18, I would say it's a solid yes that the BP can escape from the Dino. So let's check the other versions of BP and if that is still the case. And both the 88% and the 100% can escape a Dino, no problem. So what about a frail BP? And once again, when we look, both the 88 and 100 can escape a Dino. But what if the Dino is a prime Dino? And when we run the test of this fastest version of Dino versus the slowest version of BP, BP, surprisingly, gets to live. It is just fine. Let's see if this stays true for the other matchups in the game. Or will we run into a dead on sight? Also, to better determine a dead on sight, I will also be including groups as a factor, but only for specific species that are most likely to be in a group. Like if the chance to be in a group is over 75% for a certain species, like if you run into them that they're not alone, then I will consider them a pack animal. Omniraptor, Troodon, Dilo, great examples. Okay, let's continue. Next on the list, Carno. Carno is pretty all-round solid, with a pretty high speed stat, the ability to ram, further boosting its speed stat. Its preferred terrain, plains, so it can always see things around and run away from them. So that is all good and well. I'm gonna be narrowing down the list of things that could be a problem for it to things that actually fall within its speed tier. So Omniraptor, Dilophosaurus, because they can be threatening in a pack, as I earlier mentioned. So I'm gonna be factoring that. And the first on the list would be the Dilophosaurus. The ability it has is simply Venom. It bites you, you get to hallucinate and die to AI clones. Looking at the stats, Carno has no issue running away. And it also doesn't really have an issue to fight it. It can win this fight. However, we're going to be factoring in the possibility of packs, so if the Dilo is in multiple numbers, then the Carno, it can get away from it. And when we check out the Prime versions, we conclude the same thing. Although it gets a bit iffy at 100%. At this point, a Dilo could run down a Carno. So the speed at 100% prime is a little bit on the low side, pretty much lowballed. And it could be a dead on sight. So I'm gonna mark it as such. It could have been forgiven if it was a Frail Elder, but prime, the best of the best, at 100%, being dead on sight is unforgivable. And if we quickly cycle through the Dilo's prime stages, it only gets worse. Yeah, Carno is cooked. I think the speed should have been 50. Now I can run the same test against Omni and other speedsters, but I already know that Omni at prime does the same thing. Carno is dead on sight. And sadly we got our first victim. On to the next one. Sarah is pretty much an all-rounder, and honestly, it's gonna have to be tested against many species to see if there is a dead on sight in there. It's probably gonna be a long one. Or maybe not, because first on the list is Carno. However, something should be noted. Carno currently has a very spammy attack, like the headbutt can be spammed. It just turns into a rock star. I do think that should be kept into check, that is probably going to change. Like, it won't be able to do that. So let's just check on the stats alone, if Sarah can survive a Carno. I know that there is kind of like a rivalry between these two. And Carno always had the speed advantage, it could dip out of these fights. Sarah could always defend itself completely fine, also with body buff and all that. But right now Carno can do that spam ram thing. So Sarah is getting a little bit annihilated and we cannot really gauge the rivalry anymore because of that spammy buggy move, because that's literally carrying Carno right now. I would say a Sarah should be fine. Like, this is the original rivalry, this is the original matchup, and Sarah always wins this. Unless it's a bad Sarah and a good Carno. You know, like, that is how Carnos kill Sarahs. Sarah is bad and the Carno is really good. Anyway, let's check the other stages. Now obviously, a prime Sarah is gonna shit on a Carno. But I'm curious, what if we make the Carno a prime as well? And now something interesting happens. The Carno completely blows the Sarah out of the water. And I mean completely. It outspeeds it, it outweighs it, it outdamages it. This is 3 scenarios where that's not good, because the Sarah would at this point be forced to be on a body buff, and those things don't, you know, body buff doesn't fall out of the sky. So it's very conditional. I don't even know what to suggest here, because what do you do about it, right? I would say we make Sarah a little bit stronger. Not faster, but stronger. A bit more weight and a little bit more bite force. Kind of keeping the original rivalry intact, where Carno has the speed and Sarah has the power. And then if we put them both on 100% growth, the rivalry seems to balance out again. It's really just during that prime stage. Although I do think that Sarah's speed could be problematic here. And I'm very curious how it will do against certain species. Let's get Carno out of here. I want to see the real interesting shit. First on the list, our favorite, Dibble. Now when I look at Dibble, I see that Sarah will have no issue getting away from a normally sized Dibble. But what about the Prime? And once again, just barely, Sarah is able to stay away from it. Now I could check the 100%, but that will just ramp down in speed. In fact, it will be 32 kilometers. Yeah, okay, let's check Tenno. I believe that Sarah's charge bite can face tank that kicks without getting stunned now, which makes them win this fight, especially if there's a body buff. Yeah, okay. I quickly skimmed through the Tenno stats and I do not see a problematic scenario. I will, by the way, show you guys all the stats of every face of every dinosaur. Just patient. Right now I just want to run the check. And honestly, I don't think there's anything else in the roster that could be a dead on sight for a Sarah. The only possible contender here, in my opinion, is Dilo. Because Dilo has monstrous stats. Actual monster. Because when it goes into Prime, it has almost 1k HP, and that is 300 HP more than normal, and it could already face tank you to get you purple and then finish you off with the AI clones. Well, that could be a Dilo issue. I think actually what they did with Prime Sarah, the speed stays super close to its original stat. It is actually, yeah, it gets a pass. And not only does it get a pass, I would say that Sarah would be a prime example of how it should be done. Pun intended. Now, next on the list would be Dino. However, just like the BP, it's an aquatic, there's nothing really threatening it. I think the only thing you should be worried about as a Dino is another Dino. There's something very interesting happening to its stats though, but we'll get into that. Right now I just want to run viability check, and Dino is very, very viable. Go on to the next. Diablo. Now with Diablo I think we are kind of fine in general. I would have to check the prime stages though. I think that is really the important thing here. Because we already know that Dibble as a normal adult, 3 tons, etc. powerhouse. So let's see if it stays that dangerous. Now of course when it enters its prime everything shoots up and it's quite dangerous. And I don't think I see any issues here. So what about the 100% prime? At 100%, it's still quite formidable. But that speed stat is a bit iffy. It's a bit crazy low because it was original 36. So if it was like something around 35, 34, I would be okay. But 32 is a bit low. Let me run the test. Against the Rex, yeah, it can get away. Definitely. Gets close though, so let's see what happens if the Rex becomes a prime. And just like that, we kind of have a dead on sight. And I say kind of because there is a thing with the Rex's stamina where a Dibble could probably outstab it. It also has murder sprint, so that is also a problem. So that means it could boost its speed even further. If this thing gets close enough to the tree line where you happen to be eating or whatever and it runs at you, you're cooked. You're so cooked. So I will consider this a dead on sight. Dibble was actually dead on sight to a Rex. Let's see how bad it actually is. What happens if the Rex is also 100% prime? And yeah, it does fall below your own speed. However, it still has that murder sprint that can boost it to about the same speed, so a Dibble would still be dead on sight, and it is a little bit faster than an adult. So a prime Rex is actually faster. And it really seems that we see this trend continuing. Like, some are made better at the end, some are made worse. Then there are some that are made way worse. One example of something that has been made better would be the Dilophosaurus. Like, these stats look really good, and it only gets better when it hits prime, and even when it kind of hits 100%, it is faster than it is at 75%. another unique case of Prime Elder is faster than the adult. So guys, there goes that argument you guys have been spouting that the Elder should be weak and miserable because the devs clearly do not weigh them the same way. It is stronger than a Raptor and faster than a Carno. I don't think this thing is in danger. Dilo is the danger. It gets a pass, it's very viable at the moment. I think if we would line up all the prime versions of every dinosaur, that Dilo's version compared to its original is just one of the best. I also think it's a really good example of how any dinosaur that's relying on speed should be handled. This is the way. This looks really good. I also think instead of actually nerfing Dilo, we should be buffing other speedsters to follow the same type of improvements that the Dilo gets, and things should fall in line. Then we get into the cute Dryo. Dryo is mainly a prey animal, although currently people are not killing it because it's such a rare and underused dinosaur that it's more like a sighting than a prey item. But let's treat it as a prey item and see if it can actually escape threats if needed, because its mechanic, burrowing, is still missing. That said, it has another ability that allows it to dodge, and it is also pretty small, so I dare say it could hide. Very few creatures that can actually do this, like Troodon for example. They can go activate ninja mode and they're gone. That's the benefit that the very tiny ones have, and yeah. I guess let's see if there's a problem. Also quickly to touch on the burrow subject. I understand the problems with creating such a mechanic, because it's very performance intensive to have a dynamic system like that where the burrows can be created. So here's a suggestion. Why not remake them? Make entrances here and there, make an underground tunnel network, and then make Dryo one of the few able to enter it. This way they could nest inside, they could log out inside, it wouldn't matter because it's no longer a dynamic object, but static in the game. Of course, to add a little bit of flavor to it, you could add a predator to the equation. Let's say you let Troodon enter this system. I bet the Troodon community would love to have an underground tunnel network, so it would just make everybody incredibly happy. And speaking about these two, don't let the stats fool you. A Troodon kills a Dryo. Its agility is better, the speed is the same, etc. If the Dryo lands a hit on the Troodon, however, it can get one up, but it just doesn't do enough. So what happens to the Prime? Because the speed is very crucial here. When we look at the Prime, all I can see is a dead Dryo. And we don't really have to look at the frail versions, it's cooked. So what about the Prime Dryo? I think the first interesting thing that I really notice is that the speed is no longer tied. I feel that the Dryo should have kept the speed tie with the Troodon. This is dead on sight. Let's check them at 100%. And yeah, this is a dead on sight. I'm gonna count it as a dead on sight. So that makes 3. I hope this number stays at 3, but I already know it's gonna go higher. And at the end we'll try to fix it ourselves, I guess. Then we get into Galley. Likes to be in the plains, doesn't really have abilities. Its greatest asset is literally its legs. It's the fastest thing on the island. And to really test it, I think we have to pit it against other speedsters. Because if there's a problem, it's gonna be there. Now Dilo had monster stats, so let's see how it fares against Galley. First, let's cycle through the stages of Galley. Now, a Prime Galley literally has nothing to worry about. I've never seen anything that fast. That's all good. What about 100%? Now at 100% I see a whopping loss of like 12 kilometers in speed, and that is way too much, guys. I think the galley should have stayed around 55. Because, and I'm about to show you, this thing is now dead on sight. Straight up dead on sight. And at 100%, it is actually barely fine. But both the Omni and the Carno and the Dilo can catch 100% Prime Galley. So that speed really needs to go up to 55. And we got another dead on sight. I think I'm starting to see where people are coming from when they say like, oh, the elders are fine. They're probably playing one of these dinos that are just fine in their prime. And then the people who are complaining about it are the people who are playing dinosaurs that get these huge dips at the end to make them dead on sight. So far, 4 species. It's crazy. Alright, let's push on. Now the next on the list is Herrera, and after that it's Hipsy. Both of these guys can climb. Hipsies can spit at Herreras, make them fall down. Herreras can drop down on Hipsies and kill them. Like, it's a bit of a cat and mouse in the trees. And nothing on the ground can really threaten it. A PT could potentially hunt them, but it's also been made much more difficult with the new navigation of PT, so I doubt it. I give both of them straight up a pass. They are both viable. You can definitely play a Hipsy, and you can definitely play a Herrera. So that brings us to the next one beyond that. That is Maya. Now Maya is pretty solid. Things can threaten it, like Raptors and Dilos, but the Maya can also easily kill them, especially with the new knockoff iterations. I would think a Sarah would be the biggest threat to it, because it's quite strong when it gets those free hits in, and it can take quite a bit of punishment from the Maya as well. So yeah, let's run the test against Sarah. Alright, so the vanilla matchup, nothing wrong here, always been good. But what happens if the Maya goes through its prime stages? Now on 88% I don't see any issues, but on 100% a big issue shows itself. The Sarah is now faster than the Maya. And this is just the normal adult. If the Sarah goes through its prime stages, then it will just get worse. Even at 100%, the Sarah still outspeeds it. It might only be a little bit, but that little difference is enough to make this guy dead on sight. And I truly want to ask the devs to put more thought into the stats, because we're on a trend here, and I don't like it. I feel many of these stats have been put together from a one-sided POV or very rushed. Nobody took the time to actually sit back and look at all the interactions to fine-tune it for these flaws. On to the next. Oh god. Oh, I already know everything about this one. Raptor is... I'm just gonna spoil it to you guys. It's dead on sight, and I'm gonna show you why. Let's quickly cycle through its prime stats. Now its 88% stats are really good actually. The real problem lies in the 100% prime. A Raptor below 40 kilometers of speed is a dead Raptor. It's speed tied with a prime Sarah. It is outrun by a prime Sarah. It is dead to so many things that it's not even funny. Dilo, Carno, everything kills a Raptor at 100%. You even get killed by Juvies, because they just outspeed you. For Raptor, speed is very important, and I really think that the speed should have stayed a little bit higher. I would have liked to see it at 48. Kind of following the trend of the Dilo. Now the Becky had a bit of a makeover, and it is actually really strong. And even at 100%, it is speed tight with a Sarah, which is really good. You can get away from it. The Sarah can get away from it. And it just goes to show that Omni has been done really dirty, because Omni also has 39.6. Anyway, this is pretty solid, especially with the ability to bonk people and break their legs and all that stuff. Yeah, pretty solid. Becky kind of has an out of jail card with that, because if it can break your leg, then the speed stats become very irrelevant. So yeah, it's lucky. Or maybe in a way, this is what Becky deserves after being lowballed for so long. That said though, devs, I do still want to see that uphill bonk bug fixed. Because it sucks, that lingering hitbox bullshit. Yeah. Next one. Yeah, next on the list would be Patera, Rex, Stego. All three of these are excellent in their prime forms. They're very formidable. PT can fly, so it's untouchable. Hope you guys don't mind if I skip the three of these. I'll get back later to them to show you the stats, but those three in a row, fireable, straight up. Which is good. We had been on a bad roll for too long. And then next on the list we would have Tenno. Always been a good fighter, kind of an all-round dinosaur. It's very easy to play. Well, not easy, I mean, you need skill. It definitely has a skill ceiling. And a good Tenno can definitely hold its own. I wonder what happened to its stats when it goes prime though, let's see. As a prime it gets much faster, and at 100% it is still faster than it is as a normal adult. Yeah, there cannot really be anything wrong with this. This is an actual prime Tenontosaurus, so yeah, okay, it passes. Next on the list would be Trike, but Trike is quite formidable. The only problem currently is that the crush can register on the head of the Trike, and that's the only thing that's getting it killed, really. If they change it to where doing a crush on the head has some negative effects on the Rex, then Trike will be picobello. Just fine. And then last but not least, the underdog, Chudan. I think Chudan is quite fine for the simple reason that it's an absolute ninja. It can conceal itself very easily, and not only that, it is very powerful in a pack. Chudan is just fine. Of course, there's an issue, and that is that the prime requirements are kind of easier for heavier dinosaurs than for lighter dinosaurs, so Chudan is playing the game on hard mode just to get Prime Elder unlocked. But that's about it. So we got a count of six species that are pretty much unplayable in this new update. I mean, you could, until you run into a specific situation where you are dead on side. Let's try to fix that, eh? Now first I want to give a big thank you to everybody who has been collecting stats and been sending it in so that we could paint the bigger picture. It's a little bit of token of gratitude. I marked your names on the food chain wall. Let's have a look. Now a small note that we do not have all the data yet, but we did have enough to take a good hard look at this. I also want to note that I don't really like what's happening with Frail Elders, because primes are gonna become way too common if the Frails are absolutely useless. I just wanna leave that here.
Alright, so here we got the food chain. Now as I said earlier, I will show you guys all the stats. Yeah. If you guys With a brief look at it, like, Dino is kind of tied with Tyrannosaurus. Sarah's also up there since it can outrun all these guys and hunt them at the same time. It's kind of rivaling with Carno, who's then a small game hunter plugging into this. Raptor is kind of rivaling with Dilo, and then yeah, it all kind of makes sense of what hunts what can potentially catch what. Raptor also has a line extending here because it does go for bigger game and for pretty much anything except for a Dino. And it does go for Carno, but it tends to lose that matchup. So it seems fair. Anyway, let's get into the stats. I guess first of all, collected by Laurie and Simon. The stats for Prime Deinosuchus. If we follow this line over here, we end up at the Rex. Data a bit incomplete, sorry. I had no other submissions because everybody went Prime. If we follow that down, we get to Sarah. These are the stats. We head to the right to have a look at Carno. Here, there's something I wish to change. Because right now, it is marked as dead on sight, right? So what I would do is, this speed stat of 47 up to 50. And then be Gucci. Then I think Carno will be pretty stable. I don't have the frill stats, but I imagine they are absolutely horrible. And they should not dip too far because speedster. In fact, speed apex. Let's see. So we had those two. Let me get into the two Herbies. Here's Stego, data collected by Lizard Eater, Laurie and Simon. It's quite fine, works. Same for the Trike, collected by Darth Vader and Simon as well. Simon was cooking. You'll see his name many times. Also, not really a biggie. All that Trike really needs is that frontal defense that something cannot just, you know, what I said earlier. Let's see, where shall we go next then? Tipple, another dead on sight. Solution here is actually not even a Dibble problem, although it kind of is a little bit. I think the speed should be brought up to like 35 or something. You cannot take too much speed because the whole balance of everything is in the speed stat. That is what you, the devs, did yourself. Your decision. And I wouldn't deviate from it because you get a dead on sight with that. Now Herrera is quite fine. Now on the frill side, I do feel a little bit bad for this speed. This is absolutely horrendous. A good example of going too far with it. Like, it's almost 50% of its speed. It doesn't need it because it's in the trees all the time, but still, this should have been... I don't even understand, like, way too low. This could have been easily 35 and nobody would have cried about it. Just an example. Collected by Laurie and Simon, once again. They're cooking. And then we get into the Dilo. Dilo is fine, actually a monster. I can't believe that the speed does that. But yeah, it's a lot better than what we have over here. Dead on sight. Because this, just look at the speed on frill also. You cannot do that to a raptor. You can't. It will die. It will just die. And yeah, thanks to Simon for giving me some extra data on that frill. I guess then we get into the next row. Data collected by Aku. It's also a dead on sight scenario, and that's because the speed here at 50 should have been at 55. So that it can stay out of reach and stay viable. The speed here is also pretty disgusting. I actually think the speed stat of here should have been here, so that the Frail Elder would have gotten 50 and have to deal with that, oh, a Dilo at Prime, you know. But a Prime Galley? Nah. Same here, like, what is the drop? Like, it is still technically an adult. This is where it becomes grandpa, right? So here, I don't think this should be dropping that hard. Like 53 or something would be fine. Just my opinion. But that's how you fix Galley. Then we get into Tenno. Tenno's just fine. You can have a look at the data. Although the Frail, I feel a bit bad for that. Same case scenario, like too much. 35, 36 would have worked. Trudon, Ninja. Yeah. Does pretty well. It can perform because it's so tiny and it can hide. That's literally the crutch. Then we have Becky. Becky's an absolute monster. Unless you get a Frail, then you are cooked. Way too much nerfing. 35, 36 would have worked. Here we have a dead on sight scenario, and that is because the speed is lower than that of a Sarah at Prime, an Omni at Prime, Dilos, etc. Like, it cannot run away. And Maya is supposed to be able to run away. It goes from a whopping 51 to 39. That is insane. This one should have been able to keep something like maybe 46.5 or something. I'm just gonna say something crazy. Because Big Maya leading the herd looks awesome, instead of having to sit in a corner and die. That is sad. Anyway, did I miss anything from there? No, okay. Then we get into the PT. The PT is pretty solid because it can fly. That's literally it. Like, its ability makes it untouchable in theory. So by that logic, it can thrive, survive. Its ability to be able to fish anywhere, saltwater mutation. You could live on an island and be fine. What do we get next? I guess the BP. BP is fine because it can swim away and it outspeeds Dino. Collected by Caillou and Simon. This one collected by Lori and Simon. I should not forget to mention these people. Skirts and Cargo. Moon. It's Calculator and Simon. Thank you guys. Hipsy. Hipsy is fine because it can climb. Kind of follows the same rules as Herrera. It's just fine. And then we get our cute little bastard over here. That is dead on sight. And it's dead on sight because of its speed stat. I think this should have been like 46 or something. Because it's slightly bigger, has a bit bigger stride, and I don't think it should be suffering that much. This is kind of acceptable if the burrow mechanic gets in it, you know. Just make some tunnels in the map, some pre-made stuff that only Dryos and Trudons can enter. Just make some kind of a dirt pile where Dryo can press E on and then it digs into it and then it gets into the tunnel system. Same for Trudon, and if you are not a Trudon or a Dryo, then you cannot interact. Simple fix. There's your mechanic. Yeah. That are the fixes I propose to make this food chain actually work. Because right now, Dilo kills Carno, Omni gets shit on by everything, I guess, almost. Even Sarah can just run it down. It's not even supposed to interact with each other. Like, Sarah's food chain doesn't really, I don't know. It has a rival line here, but this line here is the Dino line. It's not the line for, yeah, it's not the line for Sarah. Sarah does not interact there. Bit of oversight on my side. I should have somehow made a way to split this. But other than that, the whole food chain should be fine. Really. If all these dead on sites are fixed. For Raptor, by the way, I completely forgot. I think I mentioned it in in the video, but I think 48. 48 is a really good number because it's not faster than Tylo, it's slower. Kind of keeping that trend going of being barely slower. And I really think it fits there. For Dibble, it's a simple case of Rex actually. The reason why Dibble dies is because Rex is a little bit too fast, I think. 29, 35, and then back to 29.3. Let's see what the problem is there. Yeah, the problem is that Rex is just a little bit too fast for Dibble, but that's also because Dibble gets nerfed too much. What if we make Dibble 34? Let me check. 34. Then it still gets fucked. I guess it should have been 35.5. That's the number we're looking for. Speed here should be 35.5. And then Dibble is fixed. Then the Rex would have to use Murder Sprint, and then that stamina equation would come into play of a good ambush versus bad ambush, giving the Rex an actual chance and giving a Dibble an actual chance.
So the following fixes are pretty much required. For the Galley Minus, the speed at 100% prime should be lifted to 55, 100% frail 50, 88% frail 53. For the Carno, the speed should be 50 kilometers in its 100% prime, and 100% frail should be 49 kilometers. For Dryo, speed at 88% prime should be 52.2. At 100% frail it should be 41.5. At 88% frail it should be 43. This will prevent a death on sight for these three species, Galley, Carno and Dryo. For the Omniraptor, speed at 100% prime should be 48. And speed at 100% frail should be 45.5. This will prevent the death on sight for the Raptor. Maya should have 46.5 kilometers at 100% prime, and Dibble should have 35.5 kilometers at 100% prime. If these changes are made, the outer system is actually a hit. I think it will work. Maybe some more problematic situations that I overlooked will rear their ugly head. But we got a hammer for that, no? So yeah, for now, really, these are the changes that we desperately need to make this system work just fine.